I'm like
I
your
post them
only
on.
subscriber.
Thank you.
Subscribe.
Thank you. Makes me feel so good. All right. Let's talk about the psychosocial concerns with physical disabilities. Let's see if I can get this bad boy to go full screen. No, got the little sad face of death. Not happening. All right, we're going to go from there. All right. So when I'm talking about psychosocial concerns, we're normally just talking about mental health, right? What we often don't consider is how mental health and physical health are completely related. And how when somebody gets a new physical disability or a diagnosis or after an injury, there comes with a lot of, that comes with a lot of mental baggage there too, right? There's a lot of things that change with a new physical disability. That's what we're going to talk about today. To put a little bit of context, most of this is straight from your book, so I would highlight it because if it was important enough for me to put it on the PowerPoint, it's probably important to know. It's an acquired physical disability may result from trauma or disease. Goes without saying, right? A sudden onset of the disability results in common stressors such as feelings of dependence and vulnerability and may force an individual to confront the possibility of his or her own mortality. That's an idea that a lot of people don't ever think about until something happens. You know, it's interesting. There's been studies done that will show you like your brain can't even seem to comprehend a world where you don't exist. Your brain physically can't. You're always, when you try to picture like what would your life be like, or how would the world look if you weren't there, your brain literally can't comprehend it because you're looking at it from your point of view, right? A lot of the times, especially in younger people, until something happens to them that's like, wow, I am human. I can't just, jump off of high cliffs into a lake and it, eventually that crap hurts and my joints will start hurting and things. They come to realization like, wow, I'm human too. Now that goes with older people as well. A lot of older people have that sense of, oh, I'm always going to be here, and they don't make plans and things for after, like when they wouldn't be here, planning funerals. You'd be surprised how many people, I had talked to that are in their 80s. And one of the interventions they want me to do is help find them somebody that will help them plan a will or plan their funeral and stuff. And they're in like 80s. I'm like, wow, you never thought of this sooner? And then they're just coming to this realization that something is going to happen to them eventually, and they have to plan for it. But what we're going to talk about the majority of today is how that might affect someone with like a sudden onset of something. Like it was somebody who was young, something happened, like, oh God, how does that affect somebody's mental health? Okay? All right. So some of the things, and this is a box straight from your book. Some of those changes are a loss of independence, a sense of helplessness, lack of privacy. Think how big that one is. If you're unable to go to the bathroom yourself, if you're unable to get dressed by yourself, things that, you normally wouldn't want random strangers in there doing with you, now you have to do that. You have to have help doing those things. It changes to the role or lifestyle. You may be the breadwinner in your household. You're used to making a lot of money, those kind of things. Something happens, you're no longer able to do the job that you were doing. It's a change in financial status too, right? A lot of stuff piles on after injury or a certain illness. An uncertainty regarding the future. They had this long-term, I'll work this job till I'm 55, 65, whatever. I'll retire with pension, blah, blah, blah. Now all that's kind of thrown out the window. They're like, oh God, I can't do that anymore. Think how overwhelming that might be for somebody. Isolation, separation from their friends and family. They're not going to be able to go out and do things like they used to with their friends and their family. And then trying to convince those people to come and, if you are homebound, trying to get them to come to your house and do stuff. Thinking how, if you're a very social person, and you like to go out with your friends and stuff, and all of a sudden something happens, you're not allowed, or you can't go out anymore. How devastating that would be, how depression could set in, stuff like that, right? Changes in functional ability, and then changes in body image. We're going to talk a little bit more about that one in a minute. Let's talk a little bit more about the isolation. This can kind of begin in a hospital setting. Think about COVID and how so many people were isolated. especially long-term care facilities. Those people were isolated completely, 100% locked in their rooms, told they can't come out. More or less a jail sentence for these people because of a pandemic. But even on the opposite side of that, somebody that was in the hospital for anything, they want to have any family. They're in a completely unfamiliar environment. It might just be grandma didn't have COVID, but she was dehydrated and was having signs of UTI, had to go to the hospital for some antibiotics. Now she's in an unfamiliar environment, completely isolated from everybody, and nobody's allowed in to see her. It's a pretty big deal. And then especially if there's something, heart attack, stroke, things that are major serious things that you normally be right there with them as they're going through the recovery process, and now you're not there. It's a big deal. It can exist long after discharge from the hospital, especially with, things that take a long time to recover from, like strokes, not being able to go out, hang out with friends, those kind of things, missing out on certain social situations. Why do you think pain plays a major part in someone's mental health after a disease or illness or injury?
If it's chronic, it could affect how long they can be out of the house for, and then they can't go to a social event because of the pain. They're missing out. And
it's just easier for them to sit and not be in so much pain on the couch than it is for them to, go attend their grandkids' graduation. That they're putting their pain over a lot of things. That's why pain is something so difficult to treat, because I perceive pain totally different than what Jennifer might perceive pain. I have a pretty high pain tolerance, but I understand a lot of my patients did not have high pain tolerances at all. That, a pinch is the end of the world. It was just, all over the place. That's why it's so hard to treat. And then telling people that they can't have their pain medication, the only thing that they could latch onto that helped them, it's kind of a downward spiral. They can, especially if they become so dependent on pain medicine and so used to not feeling the pain or numbing the pain. And then you take something like that away, something very minor, but can be, way over the top. It's like people with needles. A needle really doesn't hurt that bad, but some people think that it is like the end of the world. It's because we're perceiving it totally different. You're that person? Right. There's a lot of people that are that way, but to me, a needle is like nothing. I'd rather, I think a bee sting hurts really, really bad, but not a, Oh, it depends on the person again. So that's true.
And the size of the needle.
No, you're right. But, when someone gets a new injury, especially someone that's young, that's, doesn't have joint pain and stuff, they're just kind of, and then they have an injury where they're in chronic pain. They might be in pain or suffer from some form of pain the rest of their life. Spinal cord injuries, things like that. Or somebody tears their ACL. You always hear about people, in their sports injuries, and later down the road, it hurts all the time. Their knees are always hurting. It's functioning again, but it still hurts. There's a lot of stuff that plays into that. For body image. I want to use, what was the guy's name that came and talked to you guys? Mike? Is his name? Hank. Think about the change that went through his mind of himself. You see yourself as a normal, human being, average person walking around, 2 arms, 2 legs. We're good, right? We get a pimple on our forehead and we're like, oh God, everybody's looking at me. Think about how the looks and things that he might get from people who don't understand and people that have, don't care, stare at him at Walmart or when he's going through the mall or stuff, how that might affect somebody's mental health. Severe burns. That's another one that will leave permanent scarring on people's appearances, and people look at them like, you're different. And they might not even mean anything by it. They might just, something's different. It catches your eye. That's natural, right? But you'll get some people that stare, and God, kids are the most honest people in the world. They're going to say stuff that completely might hurt their feelings, but they're as honest as it comes. Just some things to think about with injury that is different, or, somebody who's had a stroke that can't use the right side of their body now, and their grandkids come in and say things like, why can't you make cookies or something with me now? How might that affect them? Or the facial drooping that's associated with a stroke. They're going to look different. That's an aspect that we have to kind of be aware of in OT. Another one that's not commonly thought about, but I'm telling you, the younger patients I've worked with, this has been an area that they're concerned about, and that's area of intimacy or gender roles. A lot of people fear after an injury or something that their partner might not find them attractive anymore. That might be like a crazy thought, but it's real. A lot of people think that after an injury or an illness, like, I don't want them to just be my caregiver, like they were my spouse. We were together all the time, these kind of things. But it's an area that we also have to be aware of with injury. Can anybody think of an example of like a diagnosis that you think this might be an issue with?
I'm sure a lot of people who have cancer and then they lose their hair, especially women.
Very. That's a good one. Very good one. That self-image of, that we've all come to know. Everybody knows when that's what somebody's going through, right? And then, I think we all have had friends and relatives and stuff that's gone through that will tell you that, they have a poor body image of themselves, that they just don't find themselves appealing. So how can anyone else find them appealing? That kind of thing. What's another one? Yeah. Like the double mastectomies and stuff. Absolutely. That's another really good. You guys are doing good with your examples. How might that? So let's talk about that and put it in a real world scenario. You were working with a patient that had cancer, just gone through chemo, had lost their hair. Let's say they did have a double mastectomy too. How do we address that? How can you have those kind of conversations with patients?
In what way?
Let's say, you have a patient who tells you that they don't feel like they're pretty anymore. That's probably how they're going to word it to you. I don't feel pretty. How would you address that? What could you do? What's an intervention that is totally within your scope that you could do?
Like figuring out like a clothing situation that they would maybe feel more comfortable in.
Okay.
That it wouldn't be so obvious.
Mm-hmm. What else? What is a common thing that women do when they have lost their hair from chemo? What do they do? Wigs. Help them find wigs. That could be another thing if they don't want to go, without. What's another one?
Well, for the mastectomy thing, my friend's mom, she got a bra that had
it just made
it
it.
just made it look like it did have one.
Right. Interesting. I've actually had a friend who was a physical therapist, had gone through it, and I think her insurance paid for her to have breast implants afterwards.
Yeah.
I thought that I didn't know insurance would pay for something like that, but apparently they're becoming more aware how important body image is after something like that. What's another thing women might do? Or men, makeup. Okay. I've done the head wrapping with patients too, like with the scarves and stuff. You know what I'm talking about? Me and her, we looked up a YouTube video how to do it. We both walked around with our caps on in the facility. Love that woman to death. She ended up passing away. She just had her whole body was eaten up with cancer, but loved her to death. And that's how we walk around. I would walk around the facility when I was treating her with that head wrap on. It just made her feel like a sense of belonging. What was a very grim situation, and a happy moment. Sometimes the little happy moments that you can create are massive deals for people. So keep that in mind.
So what about just finding a really good video of someone who went through the same thing, how they overcame it, and just motivational videos?
Support groups. There's so many support groups for different types of cancer. My fiance, right after we, got together, she got diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and is very, thyroid cancer is very survivable. It's got like 98% survival rate. But, Professor Turley and I talked about, like, I never knew from the caregiver, better half kind of thing, standpoint of view, how much just the diagnosis of any type of cancer affects somebody. Now she has a scar on her neck, and I thought that she's very all about hair done, makeup, all that stuff, and I thought that would really bother her, that scar, but it doesn't. That's one of the things that doesn't bother her. She kind of walks around like it's a trophy, like I beat this kind of thing. What was hard for her was telling people that she had cancer, telling her family, telling her friends, sharing her story on Facebook after, all these different treatments and stuff that she had to go through. And it really surprised me from a caregiver kind of standpoint of how much it would affect me trying to help her. Because it's also extremely draining. It's okay to talk about, but it's very draining for the caregiver too, because you're putting everything you're into trying to, like, listen, it's going to be okay, and they're not hearing that. I forgot why I went on that rant. Oh, just different ways that you can help people, after a diagnosis of cancer. Little moments, things that she enjoyed, really helped her. She would go in for cancer treatments over at CAMC. Me and her mom got T-shirts, and we all were a team there. And it was like, I got one that says "Her fight is my fight," and I think she got one that says "Nobody in this family fights alone." And that kind of stuff really meant the world to her. It's something small. It was just a T-shirt, but it really made her feel like she was supported. She was pretty. People loved her. She can really fight this. And that might be some ideas that you tell patients and or the caregivers of patients too, because that's the people that's with them the most, and they're the people that's going to be able to talk to them, and they know how to talk to them better than anybody else. So the point of that, all this being said, is it's okay to reach out to the caregivers instead of the patients too. You don't have to be the one like, listen, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. They can hear it all day from you guys, but it's not going to strike through. They hear it from somebody that's their significant other or whatever. It's going to be a little bit more important or impactful, right? So just think of different ideas like that might help. I had patients that didn't want to walk with a walker, and I convinced them by me walking on one. When I was with them, I walked on a walker with them. And clearly I don't need one, but it made it feel more normal. It sounds silly, but it made them feel more normal. Like, look, anybody, it's really not that big of a deal. Let me show you. Those kind of things. You doing it first makes them feel more comfortable with it. They might just be scared of using something as simple as a walker or a cane. A lot of times it's a sense of pride for people. They get older, they don't want to use one, but listen, you're going to fall and break a hip. That's my thing, is it's way easier to use a walker now than it is to have to use a walker, later because you fell and broke your hip. Having those real conversations. All right, let's keep going. Cognition. How is cognition affected? The way somebody thinks is going to be totally different. When someone gets a physical disability, it, almost affects how their mind works, how they think about different situations. Let's put it in say somebody fell at home. Every time they go past that and they got really bad hurt, every time they go past that area that they fell, they're going to think about it. Anytime that they want to go out and go to church or go to the mall or whatever, they're going to be thinking, am I going to fall there? Are people going to laugh at me if I fall? I'm on a walker now. It's the way that they're thinking. It totally changes people after an injury, especially one that's severe. Kind of talked about this a little bit already, but how does it affect the family? One thing, I want you guys to write this down. It's a book. It's an awesome resource. I might have already told you about it, but it's called Stretched, Not Broken. I already told you guys about that. What it is it's a guide. It's on Amazon. I think it's like $15 maybe. But it's a guide for people that have what's called compassion fatigue or caregiver burnout. You know, it's okay to say I'm tired, and a lot of people don't get that. You know, if something happens to, you know, one of your family members and you don't want them to go to a nursing home or be in the hospital, you want to take care of them at home as best you can. You know, that's a very, very challenging and tiring job because that's a 24-hour position. Ask anyone who's taking care of their elderly parents and not let them go to a nursing home how crazy fatiguing that is. You know, no sleep at night. It's like having, I hate to say this, I have one of my old bosses. He took care of his mom and dad who both had Alzheimer's. His mom is still living, but his dad is not. And he gets very little sleep every night. He has a routine that if it gets broken, she can't handle. She's not there hardly at all. Like very, very little interaction does she actually understand what is going on. And how fatiguing it is to see his mom in that kind of a state. Now on top of that, you know, now he has to help his mom bathe, eat, go to the bathroom, all this stuff on top of taking care of himself and his own responsibilities. It's very, very fatiguing. That book is a good guide to help guide them through that. Okay. Impact on occupational performance, the role changes, past, present, future self, you know, how they saw themselves, how they see themselves now, and how they see themselves in the future. If they don't see themselves getting better, you know, their future outlook is going to be very grim. You have to be the one that kind of helps motivate them. Listen, we can do things. You're able to do things. A lot of people after, you know, broken hip, will think, you know, I'm going to be confined to this wheelchair forever, and that's not the truth. It could be if they don't put in the effort to get better. Sometimes it's just comparing it like, listen, you have to participate with me. If you don't, you know, this frozen shoulder is going to be stuck right where it's at, and you're not going to be able to use it forever. It will freeze. You know, those kind of situations. What are some role changes that happens with physical disabilities? Yeah, it's absolutely. Right. There's always a sense of pride there, you know, in that situation. Like, oh, I'm bringing in the money, and it's not in a bad way, but it's, you know, it can be flipped if you know the wife is making more money, and then something happens to her, and then that income, it's the same thing. You know, they both have the sense of I'm letting my family down. You know, it's that sense of what do I do now, kind of thing. It's huge when someone has a new disability or a new illness. Huge, absolutely huge. What else? What's some other role changes? Don't have to be large or what. I mean, what's some other stuff? No faith.
Um, I think.
Okay, I'm coming back. Jennifer. Don't look in the book. What are some role changes? Someone gets a brand new illness or an injury or, you know, terminal diagnosis, all these things. What are some of the big role changes that might happen? What would happen? Think about if it happened to you. God forbid anything happened, but still, if something happened to you, what are your role changes? How do you consider, what are your roles right now? Who is Jennifer Johnson? Okay. Maybe. Depends what happens, right? It changes in everything. That's the point of this slide, is it literally changes your entire life. Everything changes when something like that happens. You always are considering that, first, right? What else? Faith, I'm back to you.
I guess I'd something like if someone had a physical injury and they were a coach, they can no longer coach a team.
Absolutely. That one's big, especially if like your hobbies like, coaching a sport or whatever is kind of your afternoon hobby role. It's a massive part of your life, and then all of a sudden that's taken away from you.
Or the other way, you're an athlete.
Absolutely. Think of how college athletes that were, ready to go to the NFL or whatever sport and go pro, and then they got injured during their senior season. Their entire role and life, whole outlook changed completely, right? What are some other ones? Allie?
Maybe like a new mom. She gets sick, and the dad has to take all responsibilities.
Definitely. Big one, for sure. The maternity kind of roles are huge. All right, Lindsay, bring us home. What's another one?
I guess like if you're just.
What about like your role as an employee?
Yeah, I mean, you might not be able to work.
Might not be able to work at all.
Yeah.
Right. What about like if you were able to work, but or help with this, you have to do a different job now, maybe even in the same company. Say like you were a manager or whatever, or higher up in the field, and you got a brain injury or something, and you're still functioning, but at a much lower level than what you were. How demeaning that might be to step down from where you worked your way up to. There's a lot of stuff that comes with that, All right. So some positive adaptation. What can we, talk about? Resilience is one of the biggest ones. Anybody remember? We've talked about that one several times, especially with mental disorders, about how much can someone take and keep going and keep pushing forward. That's going to play a massive role in someone after they get an injury. How much are they able to take? Can they see the positive side of this? Can they see that their injury, illness, whatever, they can make change with it? Those kind of things. And then coping. Finding, I like what Alex said about the peer support groups, finding people that have been in similar situations have come out and seen the light at the end of the tunnel. That's a big one. What are some other ones? How could you help somebody cope with a brand new illness or an injury?
Finding different ways to do things.
Finding different ways to do things, like what? You mean our entire career?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like adapting.
Adapting. Absolutely. Our whole career. Good. What else? There's a big one. It starts with E.
I was going to say that too.
Education. There it is. Thank you, Jennifer. Educate them. Finding the resources. You worked in job placement for people with disabilities, right? So, helping somebody reach that. There's a lot of people that I had worked with that definitely could be a functioning member of society if they just found the right person that helped. That's a big one. I'll say it 1,000 times. Half of our job is knowing what's out there. If we can't help them, we should know somebody that could potentially anyway help them, right? All right, I got a couple videos for you guys. This one's an SBSK video. Make this a little.
Our relationship is normal and exciting, and she helps me poop. But otherwise, we're just a regular couple that has fun, gets to the arguments, and
First is definitely both
physical and emotional. I love his personality. He's a wonderful boyfriend. And we definitely connect physically. I love his body and everything about him, really. Why are you laughing? That's making it so much harder. You told me to say that. No, don't laugh like that.
Do you like pushing your buttons?
Oh yeah, definitely. In a loving way. I think it's funny. He definitely teases me.
We are physically intimate. And not a lot of people do that. They just, ow. It's a little different, maybe. And in many ways, it's not. Not my body.
Oh my god.
Welcome to SBSK. Join me as I travel around the world and interview individuals living with a condition to prove no matter how you communicate or what obstacles you face, you're always deserving of love and acceptance. So without hesitation, let's meet today's friend. Well, let's just jump into the most important question. What's your biggest pet peeve about Shane?
Oh, this is an easy one.
Oh, God.
Shane has a habit of asking me for a sip, like from a cup, and then as I bring it to his mouth, he starts talking and just begins the conversation. So then I'm stuck holding a cup waiting for him to finish, and it's always a long sentence. He'll be like, do you remember the time? I'm not sure when it was. Nice long sentence.
Yeah, I live with a disease called spinal muscular atrophy type 2, and that causes my muscles to race away as they get older. And it was my primary caregiver. And so from the moment I wake up to the moment I get in bed, and it's doing most of my care. It affects every part of my body. I never walked. I got my first wheelchair when I was 2 years old. And today it affects my arms, my mouth, my lungs, everything.
I had absolutely zero familiarity with anything disability related coming by him. And then, like, the first date we were on, someone came up to the table and started praying over him. And I was like, uh-oh, like, what do I do? And he was like, oh, don't worry, this happens all the time. So I was shocked. And that is true. It really does happen all the time. So that definitely opened my eyes to, like, an entire world that I was completely unaware of.
People want to go to like, oh, this must be your sister, or your mom, or your nurse.
I can't believe the mom thing. I've gotten that like 5 times. He's 4 years older than me.
I have to grow up with mustache.
I know.
They are just confounded by the idea that we would be together. And that hurts. Thinking about that is hurtful. Because if they knew me, they would know that I'm a funny, intelligent, caring guy that obviously deserves love. I used to hate my body. And it was to the point where I would leave all my clothes on at the beach, like on our family vacation, because I knew I didn't like the way that people looked at me. And I knew from their looks that they must think I was weird. I had already, by the age of like 6, 7, experienced the way that the world assumed so much about me because of the way I looked.
We were on a romantic walk through the park by a lake near our house a couple of weeks ago. I thought that we clearly looked like a couple. A father with a group of kids runs up to me and is like, does he want to play with bubbles? And I was like, excuse me? And the guy was like, does he want to play with bubbles? And Shane was like, no, thank you.
What is that?
Yeah.
That kind of assumption is made all the time that I'm not capable of interacting or thinking for myself, a love for my physical looks developed in time, and a lot of that came from Hannah just like loving me entirely. Is caregiving something that's just part of your life, or is it something you consider an act of love?
I think it's just part of my life. Yeah. I don't really consider it like a special thing that I do for Shane. It's just sort of a normal part of our daily lives now that we don't even think about.
Don't look at the caregiving aspects as like a chore, but rather just something that we're hanging out and doing together.
the caregiving and the boyfriend-girlfriend
Yeah.
parts. Like, I don't see it as like, now I'm gonna be your caregiver and now I'm gonna be your girlfriend.
Time to shower.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to you.
So I think we just see it as hanging out, and
Yeah.
I think we just sort of maintain the boyfriend-girlfriend roles all the time.
I really wish the world was a little more open-minded about disability and the fact that we are all, valuable and important people.
How did you two meet?
I saw a video about Shane on YouTube. It was just like about his daily life, and I watched it, and then I clicked a link to his blog, and I read that for like 3 hours, and by then it was midnight, and I was a little bit delusional, so I emailed him and introduced myself. I was delusional. This isn't a normal thing to
You're
do.
a sound mind.
I don't know why I did it, but I emailed him and introduced myself, and he emailed back the next morning with his phone number.
Tell me how you ended your first
No, I
email.
don't want to say how I did my first email. You can say it.
She wrote this nice email, very,
Professional.
yeah. We had a lot in common. You made me laugh, haha. P.S. I think you're cute.
What compelled you to send that first email?
First, his sense of humor. I laughed throughout the entire video. He was very charming and cute.
What did you think the first time you saw Hannah?
Well, I didn't see her to start with, and I think that is important. I read her email, and I felt for her mind and her character and her personality.
It was a wonderful email.
It was
Really good email.
So I was just like, wow, I need to know more about this girl. And then the first time that I saw her face, I was like, oh, when? But yeah, I was beautiful, and she knows that I did that.
He is a very selfless person. And I discovered that a couple weeks after he met, when he was just constantly like dropping things to FaceTime me when I had a minute that was free, and just making sure that I was like emotionally taken care of all the time.
You can is you're something
My hands are like icicles. Sweating icicles.
Do you comfort her often?
Do I comfort her often?
Yes.
Well, there you go. Yeah, it did. A big part of our relationship is just like talking about and being there for each other through hard things that we go through.
Most of the time you do it the right way. The other night we were in a hotel last night, and I was scared that there was a murder in the room because it was just a really creepy room. There were a lot of things that led me to believe that. Anyway, I was going to investigate the bathroom so that I could be sure that the room was empty. And Shane, thinking that this was a moment for humor, started making like a scary monster voice from the other room. And that was exactly not what I needed in that moment.
Yeah,
I got legitimately mad
absolutely.
because I don't like that. So most of the time you comfort me. Some of the time you
Yeah, that's hard.
miss the mark.
Yeah. Life is better when you're laughing. And that idea has allowed me to do everything that I've done in life. Just being able to take a step back and laugh at my situation or whatever I'm going through, has turned me into the person that I am today and has led to my relationship, my career, everything.
What was it like the first week you lived together?
It was probably a happy sweet together.
Yeah. Blissful.
We were like definitely in our apartment and like just enjoying that feeling of knowing that this wasn't a visit that was home to him. It was a really comforting and relaxing feeling.
What would you say to a young person who does not believe they're worthy of love?
You are worthy of love. And you might not feel like it, and things that you see out there in the world and like what you get from other people right now might not make you believe that, but you are, and you have unknown abilities and interests and values inside of you that other people will find very attractive.
Thanks for watching SBS.
He's from my town.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
And he
interesting.
used to come to speak at all. I think he spoke in our school one year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I don't know what this one is. I forgot about this one.
I feel so blessed to be able to just live my life and have people be motivated by it.
I have a spinal cord injury. And so when I was seeing people roll by, I was like, wow, so that's what I'm gonna look like. I think I was born paralyzed. I was born with spina bifida. So I've been paralyzed my whole life, and it's the only life I know. So I had to kind of grow into learning I was different.
My biggest insecurity is my legs. So I decided, hey, if that's my biggest insecurity, then I'm gonna start a gene line. And all of the pictures are based around my genes and my legs and other people's legs. And that's where I realized that it's okay to be different. Because once you embrace it, your entire world changes.
People interact with me a lot of times. Like I make little jokes like, "Hey, don't die, it's okay. I'll be okay."
I would have people treat me as if I wasn't really there, and I would have people treat me like they didn't want anything to do with me. And perhaps it's because they were scared and they didn't know any other response.
One of my favorite things is when I'm out in public and I have all my girls with me who are all in chairs, who are all gorgeous. And we literally love when we see heads just turn.
Society doesn't correlate disability and being attractive. We are beautiful people. Everyone's beautiful in their own way, but we can be stylish. We can be gorgeous and stunning and fabulous, as I like to say, because yes, I see myself as being fabulous. Being a dancer, once a dancer, always a dancer. I didn't stop, so I would go out to the clubs and I would get my boogie on. And I was surprised by how guys would approach me and be like, hey, you're hot. And they wouldn't say, you're still hot. They would say, you're hot.
There is the black and white. There's the bad and there's the good. So as long as you're focusing on the good, then the bad just seems to melt away.
We're only given one life, and you gotta be proud of it.
We're bust a couple moves. Oh.
Perfect.
All right. Let me stop.